As the crisp morning sun dawned across the island of Sodor, all of the Fat Controller's engines were already bustling to work. All the engines, that is, except Henry the Green Engine. Henry was feeling lazy, and he was refusing to make any steam before his first train. "What are you standing around for?" hissed Percy as he pulled up alongside the great green engine. "You should be collecting the express by now."
"My valves ache and my water's warm," Henry complained. "Let James or Gordon do it."
"That won't stop you from working," retorted Percy crossly. "And James and Gordon are both busy. You can't expect other engines to do your work just because you're feeling lazy. That's not what really useful engines do." Henry snorted as Percy fumed away to the yard. If complaining wouldn't keep him from working, he would have to think of something else. And it came to him soon enough.
"I feel ill very often, so perhaps I could pretend that I am today,"
he sneakily chuffed to himself. A few minutes later, Henry's driver and fireman arrived to start work. Henry weakly let off a hiss of steam and wheezed pathetically at his crew. To his delight, his crew fell for his hoax. "Oh dear, you must have lost your voice, old boy," said the driver. "You'll have to go to the works right away. I'll send Percy to escort you there." Henry was very pleased. As long as he could keep his act together, he would have an entire day off work. Percy now felt sorry for the big green engine, and he agreed to escort him to the works right away. Henry was in no hurry, but in order to keep his driver and firemen fooled, he had no choice but to follow quickly after Percy. Percy and Henry arrived at the works in no time. Henry was surprised to see many engines and coaches lined up in the sidings. They all looked miserable. "What are all these engines doing here?" Henry asked, trying to make his voice sound weak. "Same reason as you," answered the driver. "They're all sick, and some of them may not go back to work in weeks."
"Oh, well then what are those engines behind the sheds doing?"
"They're waiting in line after you," replied Percy, "so we'd better get you fixed up right away." Henry now felt awful. He thought the works would have been like a holiday, but the sight of all the poor sick engines filled his firebox with guilt. Now he would have to figure a way out of the works without giving away the fact that he'd been pretending all along. Percy, the driver, and the fireman left Henry in a siding with the mechanic. Henry let out a healthy whoosh of steam.
"Well, would you look at that!"
exclaimed Henry nervously.
"My smoke box is clear again. I can get back to work right away. I mean, that's what really useful engines do after all, am I right?"
"Your smoke box?" queried the mechanic. "But your crew said that you lost your voice."
Oh golly gee, it's a miracle. My voice has never sounded better. So, I guess we're done?"
Henry thought he had fooled the mechanic, but he was wrong. The mechanic knew exactly what Henry was up to, but he decided to play along to teach the green engine a lesson. "Well, that's wonderful to hear, Henry, but I should still check you over to make sure it doesn't happen again. And while you're here, I may as well make sure that nothing else is wrong with you either." Henry spluttered, but stopped himself before any words came out. He was too ashamed to make up another lie. He only hoped that the mechanic would make his new checkup quick. A few hours later, Henry's crew returned with the Fat Controller to find Henry looking very bored. The mechanic had stripped and cleaned many of his parts. Nothing was wrong with Henry, and both he and the mechanic knew that. The mechanic winked at Henry, then turned to his driver. "I'm afraid that old Henry here is just not fit for working anymore," he sighed. "I don't think he can even work as a proper steam engine anymore. I'd say the only thing he could be used for now is a henhouse." Henry was horrified.
No, he cried. "I never lost my voice. I was only pretending because I didn't feel like working today."
Sir Topham Hatt was most annoyed.
"I do not appreciate it when my engines pretend to feel sick," he told Henry crossly. "And next time you actually do feel ill, we're going to have a very hard time choosing whether or not to actually believe you. I have a very dim view of lazy engines, Henry, and especially lazy engines who lie to their crew. You should know that by now."
"Yes, sir. I'm very sorry, everyone," apologized Henry. As the crisp morning sun dawned once more the next day, All the engines were already bustling to work, including Henry. He had himself a good night's rest, and he was even the first one out of the sheds in the morning. He also apologized to Percy about his hoax, and he even offered to help him with his mail run. After all, that is what really useful engines do.